The personality is limited. It doesn't amount to a hill of beans in this world that we now know as limitless. When we are part of the alternative to the personality, which is wholeness, it is imperative that you recognize that we are this wholeness in perpetuity. Nothing could ever diminish who we are as source, who we are as wholeness, who we are without the indignity of assuming that we are something lower. When we can recognize that wholeness, everything becomes limitless, and that weight on your shoulders will begin to lift. We think that we are carrying such a burden and that we are at the mercy of others. But when we recognize them in their wholeness, we all share in that limitlessness. We all share where there is no burden. We all share where we want to go home to that sense of wholeness while we are in a human body. We don't need to wait to share in that wholeness and limitlessness until we are without a body. We come in to find that life purpose, to hold that wholeness on behalf of someone else who may be feeling limited where they have a body and therefore they lash out and they don't want us to know our wholeness, because then what happens to them? Then they feel powerless. When someone witnesses someone who is in a body, who experiences that sense of wholeness, something happens to them in that they start to feel less than. And it's not a conscious act of violence toward another person or toward lashing out at someone who is in perpetuity of that experience of wholeness. It just, something in them feels a lack. And the natural course of action is that they will want that sense of wholeness. And so they are actually drawn to someone who wants that wholeness or who experiences it in perpetuity, again, from their higher self, while they're of this land, while they're of this earth consciousness. And they just don't know how to act. And so it comes out as lashing out toward that person who knows their wholeness. And as someone who is sensitive, because we are born to want that oneness and wholeness, and so being a sensitive person comes along with that, we tend to then want to carry their burden for them. We want to unburden them of that lack of wholeness. We want them to experience love. We want them to experience themselves as perfect. Again, even without our conscious witness or experience of that, something in us just knows that there is something wonderful in that person. And so we build either boundaries against them because we don't want that attack, or we take on their burdens. Either way, we will pile it up and assume that we are responsible for their burdens. We are responsible, as they probably have said, for anywhere that they feel lack or anywhere that they feel burdened in this world. But again, our consciousness is what they lack. Our consciousness, where we experience wholeness, which is for everybody, is what they do not hold in their awareness at this moment, which is why they go on the attack. So I just ask you to lift that burden from yourself, to let them go on with their experience, no matter how they want to hold it in this world or within themselves. If they want to experience lack in perpetuity, then we will let them. But I want you to feel your own sense of wholeness in this moment, your own sense of where there is no lack. And then feel that burden lift as you do this, that you are no longer responsible for their attack. You are no longer required to hold on to this in order to keep you safe, where you feel unburdened from a future attack, if you will, or a future negative voice toward your human aspect. So I just ask that you recognize that you are wholeness in perpetuity, and you give that back to them so that they can have their own voice, that they can eventually hear. They will eventually hear themselves shout. They will eventually hear the insults they hurl toward you. It may not be while they are of this body. It may be when it's happening to someone else, where they have redirected their negative attention towards someone else. And I want you to feel unburdened by your own sense of responsibility for them, by your feeling that you caused what happened. And just recognize your wholeness. That's the only way to rise above what happened. We can continue to dig in the garden of where we've been a victim, and we'll find all sorts of things buried under that first layer of soil. But I want you to, while you're doing that, keep going back to that feeling of wholeness, or wondering about it. Is there really a place where I don't feel lack, where I feel unburdened by anyone's personal attack against me? Is there a place where I can go beneath that first layer of soil and just be the whole and witness my environment and witness that it doesn't always have a natural flow to it, where everyone is of this awareness of wholeness? And how can I get that back? How can I become more aware of my sense of wholeness first, before I recognize the lack in another? Because then it won't happen. There's no way that you can feel a sense of wholeness and feel unburdened by the attack from another and recognize the lack in another person. And then your witness of wholeness just within your own person will do them the best benefit. So again, you no longer need then to hold the burden of their attack so that they can feel more peaceful, even if you're doing this in an unconscious way to help them move forward. So I just ask that you start to witness where, again, the personality, it holds the burden. It holds the version of yourself that has been not limitless in perpetuity. And we carry with that all the memories of all the attacks that were uttered toward us or pushed upon us, whether it's physical, verbal, emotional, or just somebody withholding love from us. We always start to go down that trail of what have I done to cause this attack? But again, when you're no longer of the personality, even while you're in a human body, and that's not that we push it aside, we just recognize our wholeness, where the personality is a very small portion of that, in order to allow us to interact with another person while we're of this planet. But you recognize your greater sense of wholeness, where you are limitless in your perception of the self and everything that he or she or they hold. And you just want to have that witness for someone else. You want to give them that. And then you notice that they are limited in their personality and that they are so much more than that. And then we all start to let go. And then we all start to feel that flow of oneness and wholeness within us. That was ours to start with. That is ours to lean back on so that we can feel wholeness in this life where we tend to feel lack. That is ours to lean back on and to be part of that wholeness, so that when we are no longer of this body, we just resume our consciousness as whole, as the oneness, on behalf of the entire whole consciousness, which could include another dimension that only recognizes itself as an individual or as a lower consciousness, if you will. So I just want you to participate and share where you are limitless, where you are beyond the personality, where you are wholeness. And it may seem boring at first, because without a personality, there isn't necessarily a sense of humor. There isn't necessarily something to do about it. It's just being in that oneness, being in that wholeness. And you'll start to notice this gentle radiation and pulsation from the center of yourself that will remind you of this wholeness on behalf of another person. And when you are of that witness, just give yourself a pat on the back and congratulate yourself for this, so that you can move forward. You can live where you are limitless without your personality, while you hold a human body in service on behalf of others, for that is why you are here. And I thank you for that. And I hope you will feel unburdened as you feel this pull back to your sense of wholeness, because that is why you are here. And so it is. Welcome back. Amen.